Imagine North America, before highways, before suburbs, before the phrase
Are we there yet?
ever existed. Now wipe your mental slate completely clean, because even that isn't far enough back. We're going to a time long before Christopher Columbus was a twinkle in Europe's nautical eye, before the US, before the Aztecs, before the pyramids in Egypt, even before humans thought farming was a neat idea. This is the story of America before Columbus, as told through archaeology, anthropology, and the very patient work of scientists who spend their careers picking dirt out of tiny plastic bags. Let's rewind, past the Middle Ages, past the Bronze Age, until we hit a time around 23,000 years ago. Well, give or take a few millennia because our radiocarbon dating likes to keep things spicy. According to discoveries at places like White Sands, New Mexico, humans were wandering across the continent far earlier than we once believed. And no, they weren't called Americans, because America wouldn't be named until Amerigo Vespucci came along thousands of years later. These early inhabitants had names for themselves, and languages we no longer know belonged to cultures that thrived, evolved, and vanished long before Europeans ever drew a sea monster on a map. Back then, the land itself barely resembled what we see today. Sea levels were lower, huge parts of the north were covered in ice sheets, and roaming the plains were animals that make modern wildlife look like the cast of a children's cartoon. Mammoths, giant bison, and unbelievably beavers the size of refrigerators. Paleo-Indians, our first known North American residents, followed these massive creatures using stone tools, spear points, and cooperation to survive in what was essentially the world's longest camping trip. As the ice melted over thousands of years, these early groups spread out. Their descendants would eventually form the hundreds of nations and cultures Europeans would encounter much later. But to imagine those cultures as static or unchanging would be like assuming medieval Europeans were all knights, kings, and Monty Python extras. North America wasn't one place. It was thousands of places, each with its own language, belief system, and innovations. Jump forward to around 10,000 years ago, the climate had stabilized enough for cultures to diversify dramatically. Some regions leaned into hunting and gathering, others experimented with early agriculture, and across the entire continent, people developed complex trade networks. Seashells from the Pacific ended up in the Rocky Mountains, copper from the Great Lakes made its way hundreds of miles south. Ideas spread too. Pottery styles, tool designs, and ceremonial practices moved along these trade corridors like the world's earliest social media. Now let's introduce you to a world that existed between 2000 BCE and 1500 CE, a span longer than the history of Rome. This was the era of some of the continent's most spectacular civilizations, long before anyone in Europe had even imagined a place across the ocean. In the Mississippi River Valley, what is today the heart of the United States, arose a continent, wide tradition of mound-building cultures. Each created earthworks so massive that early Europeans assumed giants must have built them. Spoiler, no giants, just really good engineers. Take Cahokia, for example, near modern St. Louis. Around 1050 CE, it exploded into a metropolis, larger than medieval London. Tens of thousands of people lived there. Its central pyramid, Monk's Mound, is bigger at its base than the Great Pyramid of Giza. But unlike Egypt, Cahokia was built almost entirely from compacted earth, by hand. Cahokia had rulers, plazas, an astronomical calendar site nicknamed Woodhenge, and suburbs. Yes, North America had suburbs before Columbus, which is either inspiring or depressing, depending on how you feel about the suburban traffic. The people themselves never called the land America, but they did have names for the places they lived. The Dain, for example, called their homeland Dain Baikia. The Cherokee called theirs Tsalagi Elohi. The Haudenosaunee speak of Onovarekech, the Great Turtle Island, a name that many other indigenous nations shared variations of. Far to the north, Inuit groups lived in regions they called Inuit Nonangat, the homeland of the Inuit. To Europeans, these were the Americas, but to the people already there, they were simply home. Maps labeled this unknown land as terra incognita, or simply nothing at all. They had no idea that millions of people lived there, speaking over 300 distinct languages, practicing astronomy, medicine, agriculture, diplomacy, and highly developed spiritual systems. In every region, North America before Columbus was not some sparsely populated wilderness, It was an interconnected mosaic of cultures, each with history stretching back thousands of years, which brings us to the moment Europe shows up. By the late 1400s, North America's population was somewhere between 2 and 10 million people. Estimates vary as archaeological evidence is constantly refined. These nations call the continent many things: Turtle Island, Inuit Nunangat, and Europeans called it the New World, which is a bit like walking into someone's house and declaring it newly discovered because you personally hadn't been there before. Columbus' arrival in 1492 marked not the beginning of the story, but the beginning of the collision between worlds. A collision that would reshape continents, erase millions through disease, and permanently alter the course of global history. And that is America before Columbus. A land rich with history, culture, science, engineering, diplomacy, and human achievement. Millennia in the making, long before free European ships appeared on the horizon. Thank you for watching. Remember, keep looking up.